you're the leader of the school.
Absolutely.
You're the captain of the ship.
In all honesty, what we tried to do was to try and bring Islamic studies and Quran as one of our core areas of learning. And it needs to be in an Islamic school.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a worse lesson to cover.
Or the one that you'd least look forward to?
It would probably be something like teaching nasheeds or something like that.
Can you tell me something about your head teacher that I can use to try and trip her up? Or tell me something that she wouldn't expect. And mashallah, do you know what she turned around and she said? I couldn't do that to my head teacher.
I think I know who it is. I want this to be a place where it's not just nice for children to be in, but staff to want to work here as well.
Welcome to the Murabiyoon Show, raising awareness of Islamic schools. How long have you been in headship?
Since 2011.
2011, again, 12 years?
Yes.
Wow. Time flown?
It has. I didn't think I was going to be in it for this long. Actually, I didn't think I was going to be in an Islamic school for this long. When I came in as a teacher, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try it out, inshallah, for a year, see how things go. And at the time, I also brought my own child, my son, into nursery. So he went through the school system.
Wow, mashallah.
But after a year, I thought, I came from the mainstream sector.
Sure.
So I was a teacher in the mainstream sector. And I thought, you know what, there is a need for Islamic schools. And I feel I can bring my skills and, try and contribute to that. And, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in places, he plans and, he's the best of planners.
Sure.
So when I came in, like I said, I didn't think I was going to be in it here for that long, but here I am, it's 12 years or so and still here. And I still feel that, alhamdulillah, I'd still love to give a lot more to try and, it's about the next generation and leaving a legacy and having an impact, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I think when I started out, I was very much about outcome orientated. It was about have to achieve. Now it's, I suppose as you mature, you also start thinking that actually, it's the effort that you put in and the intention that you bring to something. The outcome, that's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever that may be. But if our intention's right, then inshallah, we will achieve what we, seek to achieve.
It's really interesting because even just as recently as yesterday, for some reason, I had this thought in my mind where I thought to myself, this idea of doing good, and you assume that the goodness that you've done that is visible to you and I is granted that it's going to be accepted. But actually, you don't know if it's going to be accepted. No. And you need to pray that it be accepted. So your point about outcome, it's not in your hands.
No, absolutely.
It's outside of your control. And I think that's such a valuable lesson for a lot of people to learn. You said something there where you said at some point in your life, there was a moment where you thought there's a value to Islamic schools. And I'm tempted to second guess what that was. But I just wanted to ask you first and then maybe see what was that moment where you thought there's a value to Islamic schools?
I think it was from my own personal experience. With my older son, he went through the mainstream.
Sure.
But fully from primary all the way. And I saw some of those struggles and challenges that I had to go through with regards to, for example, and even working in a mainstream, having to teach things that didn't quite feel right to me, wasn't really within, the sort of realms of the deen.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it was a challenge. You had to challenge the management.
Yeah.
And similarly, when my son went through certain things like, for example, teaching SRE and the way that was done was quite, I think for him, it was quite traumatic, actually.
Wow, subhanAllah.
Even though I had, at the time, opted him out of it, for some reason, something happened in the school and he ended up having to sort of go through it. And he came home and he was really traumatized by it. And I decided with my second son that I would want to try and put him through the Islamic education.
Okay.
But at the time, I didn't know what the options were out there.
Yeah.
And so when he was at that stage coming into school, I thought, right, okay, let's look at what the options are. And at the same time, I would also like to try and work in an Islamic school. And I guess that was really my decision. It was because of my own experiences with my own children that, changed that. When I came into the school and what sort of helped to change my mind about staying on and being part of that, being here, I guess I saw the value that we were giving the children. They were getting pretty much, what they would get in a mainstream, but there was no compromises you had to make.
Yeah.
And I often think that, from our old school, my own school experience, going into school and everything else, you always had to have like a double identity.
Yeah.
In school, this was okay. You came home and there was something else. There was a madrasa or something else you had to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite difficult for children. And it shouldn't be like that.
No.
Islam isn't like that. Islam is, it's part of life. And it should be part of life. Yeah. And I know parents really do try hard, even, sending in mainstream. Not everybody can send them into Islamic schools. But if there is an option where you can have that, you can have the best of everything, then why wouldn't you choose that? And so I guess that's what's kept me here. It's to try and enhance that so that our children don't miss out on anything, but actually they're getting everything that they need. And it's about nurturing that whole child and making sure that they're also comfortable with their Islamic identity and not embarrassed. And I think when I went to school, there was an essence of that.
Yeah.
Because you were made to feel like that.
Yeah. One person at school, one person at home.
Yeah, yeah.
One person if you bump into a school friend outside.
Yes, yeah. And always, you're sometimes apologetic about things going on, making excuses. And we don't want that for our children. They shouldn't be like that. They should be comfortable being a Muslim. But we're being also proactive and giving back to society as well. And so in essence, that's what we, in Apex, that's what we try to do, inshallah. And I think that's why I think there's a place for Islamic education, absolutely. Yeah. And if you have the option, then why not?
Yeah. When I said to you earlier on, I was going to second guess, that's something along the lines of what I was going to say. Because usually, even for myself, my own experience in Islamic education, getting involved, was triggered through my own wants and desires for my own children. And all of a sudden, you find that you get sucked into the machine. And it's I think for a lot of people, it's an entry into the Islamic schooling world. But at the same time, I think the level of passion and commitment that comes through something that's more than driven by a career or by money, but is driven by love for your children and wanting the best for them. And then from that, it manifests to wanting the best for society and community. I don't think money or even experience can even buy that, because there's something intrinsic in somebody's heart, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the major challenges, I suppose, in an Islamic school is the money. It's the budgeting. And so whenever we get staff in, when I came into the school, actually, I think salary-wise, it was less than half of what I would have got in my mainstream school.
Wow, subhanAllah.
So it's a sacrifice you make, but you know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that possible and eases things when you make it for them. And this is why I go back to that intention, having the intention and everything else. Outcome, you leave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. And so, the staff that we have coming in, it isn't because of the money. We say, look, if it's the money, then you're going to get more if you go to mainstream. Yeah. There's got to be more. Teaching's got to be a vocation that you take on. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's more than that. You're thinking about it when you're at home. You know, you go to the shops and you see a resource and you think, oh, that'd be fantastic, you know, for my class. So it's definitely more than money. It's got to be.
What's been your biggest challenge in the last 11 years, 12 years in headship? What's the single, if I was to press you and say, what's the single thing that comes to mind? Is there something you can share with us?
Yeah. I guess it would probably be trying to deliver a really high standard in terms of curriculum, in terms of learning and teaching and all of that, but doing it with a very tight budget.
Okay.
And I think most Islamic schools would probably say that is probably one of their biggest, if not the biggest challenge. You know, we don't want to sort of make that an excuse for our children not getting the best.
Yeah.
And we don't. And so we kind of work harder in terms of being creative and how to do that, whether it's being creative in how you use the space that you've got, which is limited as well. Yeah. Funds that you have, which is limited.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. I can imagine this is going to become a common theme with many of our leaders up and down the country. But alhamdulillah, if I've seen anything, even from our little tour earlier on today, you've got to credit Muslim schools for maximizing the resources that they have. Yeah, and when we talk about that, we're talking about just the facility, the equipment, the people. I mean, how dynamic are Muslim school staff? How many job titles do they have?
Absolutely. Yes.
How many hats do they wear? You know, and Allah only knows how many little things that you've done along the way that you would probably say, under conventional terms, it's not within your remit, but somebody's got to do it, and it falls on you. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of other questions just to understand kind of your journey of the last 12 years. What's been the most difficult point during your term in headship? Like, again, a specific time where something happened, something went wrong, or you were up against it. What comes to mind?
I guess, you know, it's dealing with people. I think one of the areas as a head that you have to do is about managing staff, managing parents, managing children. Children, I would say, you know, they're probably, alhamdulillah, the most easiest. And they're so innocent. And they come ready to kind of learn and take on. As adults, we all are. We're pretty much very set in our ways. Yeah. And that can be sometimes quite difficult. And I would say that some of the most challenging experiences I've probably had is when I'm either dealing with some parents or staff. And yeah, that's quite a tough
Anything specific that comes to mind?
Well, with parents, I guess it's, you know, we've had to, over the years, for example, put up fees. Okay. That's never, ever an easy thing to do, ever. It doesn't matter how wonderfully you do it. It's always going to come hard. And it's not something that we like doing, but we have to. Otherwise, you just don't run. You can't run.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're in this place at the moment where energy bills are about to double in cost for all of us. So I think, you know, in society in general, anybody having to take a price hike on anything is difficult.
It's difficult, yeah. And that can, and so when we last put the fees up, that was a hard one. You know, we tried to do the best we could in terms of consulting parents, but still it was, and so you get a lot of questions in terms of why, and, you know, can there not be another way? And, you know, and it's something we had to go through. That took a while. But alhamdulillah, we're now sort of, I think it's about 2 years since we put it up. You parents are a little bit more used to it, but at the end of the day, like I said, energy, you've mentioned the energy bills are going up and everything else, and they're going up for schools.
Yeah.
And all costs are going up for schools. And what sometimes we don't realize is that the schools got to run as well.
Yeah.
And as much as we appreciate the hardship on parents, but if we don't also try and address the needs of the school,
Yeah.
You don't want to get to a point where the school is in a position where it has to think, can we run or can we not run?
Yeah.
And we don't want to ever get to that situation. Apex has been running, it's been established since 2004. On this site, we've been here since 2009. And inshallah, we want to grow further. And, there are lots of ideas that we've got in terms of doing that.
Yep.
But that all comes with a cost. It all comes, and we're trying to be creative, actually, in that. In terms of how we do that. So looking at different projects in terms of, growing a sort of like an investment portfolio so that we can feed that money back into the school.
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking for new ideas, starting up other projects. And that's something that we're going to be launching very soon in terms of our vision, the Apex Trust vision. There's, exciting things to come, including for the school itself. We are currently a primary, but there's also, inshallah, some development there that will happen. And hopefully we want to try and extend that into hopefully a secondary as well very soon.
Sounds very promising. So that leads me nicely onto my next question, actually. What are you most looking forward to now in your career as a head teacher? I mean, mashallah, you've been doing it for the last, like we said, 12 years or so. I don't want to press you in terms of how many more years you're going to be in headship for. But even if you just looked 5 years ahead, what are you looking forward to undertaking? What's going to excite you?
Well, we're actually in our sort of that journey of having changes coming along. One of the things I would say is the secondary, inshallah. So if I was to say in 5 years' time where we'd be with that, I would say, inshallah, that we've established, a successful secondary. The other thing that we're kind of working on at the moment is the curriculum itself.
Okay.
We've sort of embarked on the journey in terms of trying to change the curriculum. I think it was just pre-COVID that we started on that. And so that is something that we're going to continue on doing to try and establish that a little bit more, bring it together, and hopefully have a curriculum that starts off in the early years but goes all the way through and inshallah goes into our secondary. We've often been asked, even in terms of the primary, when the children get to year 6, can you not do a secondary where the tarbiyah continues on?
Yeah.
And at that time, it was always about, not right now, the time's not right. And we feel now, inshallah, that, the time's come and we'd like to do that. We'd like to be able to offer that and have that, that tarbiyah continuing on. And in a sense, that gives the parents a peace of mind as well.
Yeah.
Because they're not having to look for another secondary, and they know what they've gotten in the primary will, inshallah, continue on into the secondary as well.
So let's talk a little bit about the school. You're one of many Islamic schools, okay? So why should I send my daughter to Apex? What is it about Apex that is any different to any other Muslim school? And also at the same time, I myself went to a mainstream school, okay? I myself had supplementary Islamic education after school. Is that not a model that can work? Is that not a model that, we can still kind of nurture our children on? I think,
I went through the same model myself. And like I said, my older son also went through the same model. But I think as time is going on, things are getting more and more challenging.
Okay.
And I'm sure parents are, quite well aware of things like, for example, RSE coming along and what that means in terms of the mainstream sector. We've been covering SRE, for example, within the Islamic school since even before I joined as a head. So it's nothing new for us. And so when it comes to teaching that, it's never been a problem. But what parents will have in terms of a peace of mind is that how we do it.
Yeah.
That's the difference that you're not going to get if you send your child to, say, a mainstream school. I know when there was a whole debate about sort of RSC and, oh my goodness, that's going to be now, statutory and everything else. We weren't really fazed by it too much, because for us, as far as we're concerned, it is an education that our children need. Now, we can decide, are we going to take hold of it and do it in a way that has sort of modesty and haya and everything else, or are we going to outsource it and let our children just find out? And they can find out in all sorts of ways.
Yeah,
they can Google it and they'll find out.
Yeah.
But what they find out and how they find out is a big difference.
Yeah.
So, as a school, why Apex? We've always been, for us, it's always been about being part of the community and also keeping up to date. So in terms of what's going on out there, but not necessarily being reactionary, but actually taking, we're there in the forefront already. Yeah. And so, like I said, with RSC being just an example, we've been doing it even before the statutory regulations came along, because it's we take the child and we think about what are their needs, and their needs are changing constantly. What the needs of children were perhaps 20 years ago, it's very different now. Definitely. With exposure to social media and everything else, and when we need to adapt ourselves to those needs. So in a sense, I guess what makes Apex different is that we are trying to be at the forefront of things. We do look at research and try to embed things from research, things that have been already done, and learn from best practice.
Sure.
We try to network with mainstream schools as well. This is something, as a head, when I came in, for me, that was a very core part of not being insular and thinking like we want to be in a bubble and keep our children in a bubble. It was always about how do we integrate as Muslims into society and be proactive citizens as well.
Yeah.
And that involves having partnerships with, mainstream schools, with other independent schools. We're part of the Independent Schools Association, which is quite a large body. They've got over 500 independent schools. And so there is a lot of, communication that goes on and between the schools. We're also part of teaching alliances with other mainstream schools, and I work quite closely with them, and that helps in terms of how we develop as a school. So a lot of the ideas that we've brought into our school has been things that I've seen and that have worked in other schools, and thought, right, okay, let's now see if we can make this work for our school and tweak it to fit with our children. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of benefit in that. And that's what we want from our children as well. We want them to be also proactive and be able to be confidently mixing with children from other schools and other communities and organizations, and flourish in that. So we try to sort of partake in lots of inter-school competitions, for example. We've had previously our children participating in the Independent Schools Association competitions. I think one of them was like an essay writing competition where one of our children did actually, win that spot. So, being an Islamic school should not stop us from doing all of those things. Yeah. The other reason is that we are a small school. We like to keep it like that. We see ourselves as a sort of like an extended family, you could say. Our class sizes are small. Yep. And so the children get that attention that they need. And we really value extracurricular activities as well as outdoor learning. So one of the key things that we have had pre-COVID, inshallah, we're planning to start up again, is like an annual residential that we do for our year 4, 5, and 6. And that's, every year we've been doing it, and it's always been very successful. We try to make sure all our children have that experience, because they're not necessarily ever going to have that experience when they go to secondary, from whatever reason. Sometimes it's the cost, sometimes it's to do with when a children, particularly the girls, when they get to a certain age, parents are reluctant to send them off, for a couple of days. But in the primary school, where you've got the teachers involved in that, they're looking after the children.
A bit more accommodating.
Yeah, absolutely. And we try to also involve the parents in as well, and invite them in. Things like that are possible. We try to sort of have also trips every half term that are related to the curriculum. So outdoor learning for us is quite an important thing, just as important as maths, English and science and all of those things. So I think those are quite key things that make us, and also the way we sort of structure our curriculum is very different as well from a lot of the mainstream, not just mainstream, actually, other independent Islamic schools. And that's something that and on that, in all honesty, what we tried to do was to try and bring Islamic studies and Quran as one of our core areas of learning. And it needs to be in an Islamic school. Yeah. And so the way we've structured our curriculum and our timetable makes it possible to ensure that, the Islamic studies and Quran aspect is very much as important as all the other subjects.
MashaAllah, this is my second time coming to the school. And every time I've been here, well, it's only been on 2 occasions, I've really learned something new. And when I say something new, I mean something quite unique and refreshing. That's, I feel, is unique to your school. And so the time, and time won't permit us to go into this, but inshallah, maybe another episode we can do. Inshallah. But the work that you're doing about the way you've got your classes organized, like you said, and taking Islam and turning it into a core subject, that's amazing. When's the last time any of us, between us, ever heard somebody refer to Quran or Islamic studies or Arabic as a core subject? I can't remember the last time, because I don't think there ever was a time. So I think that's so powerful what you've just said there. And some of the other things that you mentioned as well, in terms of just RSE, for me, it's about taking ownership.
Yes.
And not leaving it to chance to somebody else, and saying, actually, we're going to own it and we're going to run with it, and inshallah we're going to do it the way we want it to be delivered on our terms. And I think, again, that's really brave, and mashallah, you guys have been doing it well before the statutory requirements came out. Why? I imagine because it's already been prescribed in our deen.
Yes.
So really and truly, the statutory requirements didn't necessarily need to tell us that. Our own scriptures already, and what we understand from Prophet ﷺ has already defined that for us. So, mashallah, there's some really good things there to consider. So, I'm going to take away what you've said, and I'm going to discuss it with the wife, and we'll consider whether or not we're going to move to Ilford and send our daughter over to here, mashallah. But no, mashallah, it's I think. I like to think of Muslim schools as being boutique-like shops, because you could go to a high street, and you could go to any retail shop, and you'll find that same retail shop in every high street, right? But if you find a boutique shop, you're never going to find that boutique shop anywhere else, right?
Yes.
Whether it be somewhere that sells secondhand furniture,
absolutely,
hairdressers, or somewhere that sells vintage clothing. I don't know, whatever it might be. But the point being is that there's something special about it, something unique about it, and that's how I see every Muslim school.
Yes.
There's something special and something different about every Muslim school, and that you mentioned about being part and parcel of the community. And being an extension of the family.
Yes.
I think these are invaluable. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you're enjoying the content. If you enjoy what you've seen, please press subscribe. It'll make a big difference. Jazakallah khair.
People have a perception of Islamic schools. I think we all did, in fairness. I mean, I didn't know when I first came into Islamic schools what to expect. And there is often, sometimes you get parents coming in, and we whenever we get children coming in, we always do an interview at the beginning. And, often you get parents saying, well, you know what, I'm sending my child to an Islamic school because it's the Islamic studies side I need. You know, okay, don't worry about the other side. You know, we'll manage that.
We'll top
and
it up.
I say to that, well, why? Why would you compromise? Why can't you have everything? Why can't you have the best of both? And should we not be like that as Muslims? We should always be looking at trying to excel and be leaders in what we do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it shouldn't be that you send your child to an Islamic school just because you want the Islamic side to things. You know, you want the best of everything.
Yeah.
You know, because we want our kids to be at the forefront of things. We want them to be the potential leaders in whatever area they go into.
Yeah.
And that requires excelling in all areas.
Yeah. And I think parents should have that expectation of Islamic schools.
Yeah.
Because pressure is something that we all thrive on, and it's something that actually motivates us, and it's something that actually allows us to excel. And I'm not talking about pressure in the sense of kind of breaking the door down and making things difficult, but supporting us, participating, being positive. So I think, definitely there's many benefits to kind of having a different mindset. But I think Islamic schools are at a bit of a crossroad at the moment, in the sense that I think we have to do better in terms of communicating what is our value proposition, or what is it that we're offering. And I think because there's too many assumptions that are out there what the Islamic school offers. Like you said, it's a place where you can't get the best of both worlds, but actually you can preserve your deen, and then we'll top it up elsewhere.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
You know, I think through better communication and, you know.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because it is one of the things that as a school, and not just maybe our school, but maybe, you know, most Islamic schools, and it's partly to do with, I suppose, the budget and capacity and everything else, that we're not very good at sort of, you know, shouting out about things that we do so well, and putting ourselves out there. And most cases, you know, the enrollments that we get, when you ask them also, how do you know about Apex and how do you hear about Apex? Often I would say probably over 80% of the case is, oh, I know a friend. It's referral.
Okay.
It's someone who knows. I mean, it's the best kind of referral that you could get.
Yeah.
And because, you know, somebody's already been here, done it, and, you know, what better way? But it's usually that. Otherwise, we get a lot of parents who say, you know what, I've been around this area, I've never heard of Apex. And we just don't do enough as a school to, that's something that I think, a lot of Islamic schools, we're just, you know, it's an area that we've embraced, in the sense that we've realized that this is our shortcoming. And inshallah, it's something that we are doing a lot more of. So, you know, embracing things like social media, you know, there's a good and bad of social media, but in all honesty, everybody's on it. And so we're pretty active actually on Instagram.
Okay.
You know, you'll find us quite active on Instagram.
I won't find you. I don't have Instagram.
Those that do. But we've taken on, in terms of, you know, the new ways of trying to do things, communicate. And so, we'll put out there things in terms of how the children are working, because we know these are things that perhaps as a potential parent that you might want to see. You know, what are some of the work that the children do? What are the standards that, you know, they produce? And you know, social media can do that. It can,
without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. And I think what it is that, like we said earlier on, staff in Muslim schools are usually got more titles and letters, you know, than anybody could kind of collect in a whole career, because of the kind of needs of the school and how resourceful people need to be. And I think the element of marketing and social media and communications is just something that I think in time will just come naturally. But I think we're at that phase where some schools are probably doing it really well. Some schools are probably not doing it at all, and some schools are in that transition mode. So, you know, no doubt about it, we're going to get there. But on that point, actually, I want to ask you a question about your staff, because we could sit here and say, Sister Meherun, mashallah, you've done it all, and, you know, Apex is thriving, and you might tell us yes, or you might say
I might say no. I see myself in a sense as a facilitator. I see our staff as the core parts of the school. They are the biggest asset and the resource that for any school, I believe. And so therefore, it's really important that we invest the time and effort on our staff to develop them, because ultimately the success of a school isn't to do with, I think, management. It's never one person that does it all. You can have all the vision you want and all the ideas you want, but ultimately it's the teachers that are going to bring that into fruition, really. And so, the success of the school, I would say, is always has been a team effort. And not just teachers, but in terms of even our admin and, cleaners, everyone. Like, you're not going to have a school that's successful when you don't recognize that. I see myself, in all honesty, as a facilitator, someone who sort of coordinates all that, I guess. But ultimately, the success comes from that team effort. Yeah, for sure.
I'm pretty certain you've probably got a WhatsApp group for your school.
Yes.
And I'm pretty certain that WhatsApp group doesn't stop at 3:30.
No, it doesn't.
I'm pretty sure that it doesn't stop on the half-term holidays.
No.
I'm pretty sure that some of the staff are probably having to come in here and there, somebody's left the light on, or somebody's forgotten something, or somebody needs something, yeah. So mashallah, absolutely. I think it's credit to staff in your school, or all Islamic schools for that
absolutely.
matter. What's the leadership like of the school? Because obviously, I imagine above you, is there a governing body? Is there a board of trustees? So how are they? How supportive are they?
So we have a trust, and the trust, it's not a large trust. It's some core individuals, but alhamdulillah, the trust have been there. I'm also part of the trust, but before the original trust, I will say, they're the ones who have sort of been there from the inception, like from the start. Yeah. Apex started off from a homeschool initiative that was passed on to a group of trustees who decided, okay, let's make a school out of this. And, some of those core trustees are still there, alhamdulillah. And I guess they've made a lot of sacrifices, a lot, and still continue on. They're all sort of, people who work, in other areas. So they have to give up a lot of their time to invest in this. And it's always boils down really to the intention that was there right at the beginning. Sure. It was to have a successful school for the community. And it has been, and I think because that intention has always been quite sincere from the start, alhamdulillah, we are where we are at the moment. It's gone through a lot of challenges. We have the trust body who sort of includes about sort of 6 of us.
Sure.
And then it's myself as the head teacher. And then it would go down to, I've got an assistant head, and then we've got teachers.
Okay.
So, yes, you do have to wear a lot of hats, because as well as wearing the head cap, I'm also a trustee as well. Yeah. And so therefore, it's a tough one, because as a head and a trustee, you want to be strategic in your ideas and work strategically. But at the same time, as a head in a small school, you're also the operational person. Yeah. And so you're firefighting and doing all of those day-to-day things that in mainstream schools wouldn't happen. Yep. You'd have other people to do that. And I guess that's what makes it challenging. Because in order to move the school on, you need to be strategic. Yeah. And so trying to wear like multiple hats can be quite a challenge. But it's one that we've taken on. We are open to building that trust up. So alhamdulillah, this has been, I think that's probably one of the reasons I've probably stayed for so long is because the trust has always been very supportive.
Mashallah.
They're very open-minded in terms of trying different ideas, because it's always been about the children being at the heart of the decisions.
Yeah.
And if it is good for the children, then inshallah we will try it. And they've been very supportive in that. So, there's been a lot of ideas that I've come up with. And I've always taken it to the trust, and they've always been open to trying out, new things. And similarly from the trust angle as well, they're always open to ideas and about progressing the school and the trust body in terms of other projects as well. So yeah, it's been very supportive. And I often talk to other heads, and I don't always hear the same. It's always been, there's a sort of a relationship between the trust or the governing body and, the head and the school. And things just don't, things seem to have to go through this sort of, bureaucratic sort of process, which alhamdulillah, I have to say, I've not experienced here. And, that's been...
No, mashallah, it's, I think it's always nice to know that there are people who are, quote unquote, managing you or you're reporting back to, if you've got a good relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got if you're on the same kind of path as well,
yes.
Makes a massive difference. And I think, to be honest with you, I think I would echo what you said in terms of just a general feeling at times. But I think definitely there's some lessons to be learned, and I think some of our colleagues maybe lead on you from time to time on some of your experiences. What's the kind of driving up here last time round and today? The school's in the middle of a housing estate, you could say, and I was just pretty surprised when I just popped along and wow, okay, there's the school, and so it feels very much part of the community in many ways as well because of that. But what is the general feeling within the community of the school? How well respected or accepted is it, and how does it fit in with the community activities that go on?
So it is a fairly small school in terms of the population of Muslims that you have within Redbridge.
Yeah.
But like I said, we've been in Redbridge since 2009, and I would say that not necessarily everybody knows about us. And that's partly to do with the fact that, like I said, marketing hasn't always been fantastic. But we've involved ourselves in a lot of things, actually, within the community itself. So, for example, again, a lot of things used to happen pre-COVID, and we're trying to get back into it. So one of the things that we've established, every year, we do sort of like an activity day in Hargreaves, local, where we invite, it's open to everyone. It's not just our parents.
Sure.
And that's, every year, it's grown bigger and better. And the last time we did it was in September, and that was, we got a lot of good feedback from that. Other things that we've done in terms of the community, we started up a street play initiative, for example, where we sort of cordon off the street. We do this with the council. Obviously, they permit us to do this. We cordon off the street, and spend about an hour where all children can come out and just play on the street. Wow. Like back in the old days when, kids used to be able to play on the street, because we recognize that it's very difficult for parents to take children out, and it's not always possible. Either it's not safe or there isn't enough space. And so we've done things like that in conjunction with Redbridge. We try to have relationship with other schools in the local borough, for example. So we have very good relationship with Newham schools through a teaching alliance. And we've worked on many projects with them as well. So every opportunity that we get to try and go out there, we do that.
Okay.
We try to get our children, for example, we've linked up with a local care home where the children have gone down and spent a little bit of time there doing some gardening for the elderly.
Yeah.
So, like I said, whatever opportunity we get, we try to get our children to go out there and be part of that.
No, mashallah, when you were saying that, when you said play, I thought there's a theatre production going on outside.
Oh, no, it's play.
I was thinking, where do I buy my ticket?
Yeah, it's free. Everyone's welcome when we do it. But yeah.
One of the things that we haven't really spoken about is the student experience at Apex. And obviously, that's the whole reason why Apex exists. What is the student experience like? I mean, it would have been fantastic, actually, just thinking about it now, if we had one of the students here and we could have asked them. Maybe that's another show that we can record.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what is the student experience like? I mean, and I mean it from every angle, because for some students, it would be a case of, I want to be here. For others, maybe, they've been asked by their parents to attend this particular school, and it's not the school that all their friends or their family go to. What is it like?
Well, I mean, maybe I'm biased. For me, to be honest, is that I want every child that comes into the school to want to be here. Doesn't matter in terms of how they came here in the first place, whether it was a decision they took or their parents took, but ultimately, whilst they're here, I want them to have an enjoyable experience. No, not every single day is going to be an enjoyable experience, but that's life. And they need to learn that as well, and be resilience is something that we try to push on as well, because not every experience you have in life is going to be one that you necessarily want, or it is positive. Life's also about negative things as well, and we want them to have that. But ultimately, we want them to enjoy coming here, and I would say that overall, I would think that most children would say that they do enjoy being here. And some of the things, I guess, that they would probably say that they enjoy about being in school is about, I suppose, their friendships. But I'd like to think that they also enjoy that teacher relationship as well, because for us, that's a key thing. And I try to push on that quite a lot right from the start, that, we need to have that relationship with the children from the start before you can get any learning or teaching or anything done. If you don't have that, then you're not going to get very far anywhere else. Another area, I think, that our children, and often we do this. So every year we have Year 6 graduation, and the children come up with a speech that they deliver, and it's predominantly about their experience of Apex and their whole journey. And I think one of the key things that they will probably put on there is often particular teachers that they've had, wonderful experiences of. And the other thing that will come up is often the residential trip. It's usually one of the highlights, or a trip that they've had somewhere. And this is why we value outdoor learning quite a lot, because these are some of the things that children remember.
Definitely.
You're not going to necessarily remember, a maths lesson I had, I sat behind a desk and I did some work, but you're going to remember if you went for a science trip to somewhere, a field trip or a residential. The residential is one of the key things that comes up, because they're away from home, and they're also learning life skills as well, independence. And we want that independence and ownership to be not just, on a residential, but that needs to be part of school. So we try to find opportunities. So one of the things that we have is our school council, a school shura. We encourage our children to take ownership of that. So they pretty much lead it. Yes, initially I help them start it up, but I don't want to be the person that leads it, because ultimately it's supposed to be about the student voice. And so I pretty much leave it to them to manage that and what they want from that. And because we want our children to also have a say in how the school is run. So, and so for that, I tend to say to them, look, you can have an impact in the teaching, in the learning, in the experiences that you have. And your sort of the way to do that is through the school shura. And it's about every child's voice matters.
Yeah.
And I want them to be able to say that they feel that. So I'd say that those are some of the key things that they would probably say about their experience, inshallah.
So what you don't know is, following this podcast, I'm going to put a student survey out with those questions.
Yes.
And hopefully, inshallah, qualify that. Now, I'm pretty sure that, if that's how you feel, having spent the years that you spent in this school, then that's obviously there for a reason, because obviously that's probably transcending and
I mean, you can only go from things that you've seen. On that note, we also, like I said, the student voice is very important, and so we do our own student surveys, and whatever findings. I don't expect everything to come up rosy and wonderful. That's just not going to happen, and it shouldn't, because I as a school, even if you are the best that you can possibly be, there's always room to improve, always, and that's what we are about. So even if things come up in that survey where we see that we can actually improve, then by all means that is something that we will look at and think, okay, if a child is saying that, what's the reasoning behind this? There's always got to be a reason, and so I will probe that and try and sort of get to the bottom of that and see, okay, what can we do as staff, as management, to try and rectify that and make it better.
This might be the first time you've come across Murabiyoon, but just so you know, we offer much more than just podcasts. Why not jump onto our website, murabiyoon.com. We do all sorts, including curriculum development. What's a special moment that comes to mind with like a student experience? Like, what's that one particular thing that straight away just comes to you and you think, like, you remember it for the rest of your life, an interaction with a child, something happened, they said something, you said something. Does something come to mind?
Oh, probably lots of things, actually. I would say the Yessex graduation is probably one of the things. Okay. Every year, to have them go to that stage and when you hear some of the things that they say, and to think, oh, alhamdulillah, you've had that impact. Whatever that may be, but in some way you've had that impact. Sure. And you pray that inshallah that helps them for wherever they go on. I think that is probably one of the key things. And I would say other key things for me really is, when you have those experiences, you have sort of one-to-one with some children and they say things.
Tell me about one of those experiences that comes to mind, like when you've had an example of an interaction with a child, like something that stood out for you.
Oh, gosh. There is one that's coming up and I'm just trying to think of what the child said. It's just the way she said it. Oh, that was it. So she came into my office and she had this moment where I think something must have happened. And so she said, no, she was so she sort of crossed her arm, like looked like a little adult. And she said, no, I'm going to change schools. And I said, oh, that would be that would upset me, would you not miss being in the school? And then she went out and and then she came back through the door and she said, Miss, I'm going to miss you. And, next day she comes back in and she goes, no, actually, I like the school. I'm going to stay. And, it's a 5-6-year-old. But, when you have those moments, I sit there in my office and I try to have an open door policy so children know that they can come in. And she's one of those that will just literally come in at any point in time, into my office. And so when you sort of have those moments, it just makes your day. And you do remember those. It makes you laugh and you think, oh, you know what, that's why we're here. It makes it all worthwhile.
Oh, mashallah, that's a lovely story. And I'm sure at some point in that young person's life, she'll also probably remember that as well. And
inshallah, and
you never know what kind of impact that moment might have on her life as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Apex wasn't around, what would it mean to the community, or what would it mean to the students?
It would mean that those experiences that they could have had, they won't have. And the experiences that they have within Apex are unique to Apex and not going to have them anywhere else. I know that. And I guess, yes, it would be a big loss, because I think what Apex is about and what it sort of endeavors to do is unique. It is different. We do try to sort of think out of the box and be dynamic in how we do all of those things. And it would be a shame if that wasn't there. Because I think Apex is part of the community. And so it would be, in a sense, those experiences would be missing.
What would you do if Apex wasn't around?
Gosh. Being in headship for this long, there are things that I've kind of come to see as, you know what, I think this is a need. And I think one of the needs that I think I mentioned earlier was on a wider scale, not necessarily just for Apex, but just making the experiences for teachers and for SLT, not just in Apex, but just, the wider field of teaching profession, having an impact on that so that you make that experience better.
Okay.
And I think, and this is what I was saying, that I would love to be able to coach and support those experiences so that they're far better practitioners, whether it's as a head or whether it's as a teacher. So I'd love to be able to have an impact from sort of behind I guess, something that I think I would have appreciated and would still appreciate as a head.
Okay.
Now, but it's not necessarily, I suppose those opportunities have just not been there or I've not been aware of.
Are you talking about in the context of an Islamic school setting, or are you talking about just generally?
Generally, but certainly from an Islamic school setting as well.
Do you think there's a lack of just overall support?
Yes, definitely. And I think that's, it is in the wider profession of teaching, because even as teachers, in all honesty, because of the workload and the stress and everything that comes with it, teachers don't necessarily stay in their profession for very long.
No.
And, there is constant, and especially with Islamic schools, there is a retention issue.
Yeah.
Partly, I guess that's to do with also the salary that we pay or not pay, I should say. But if you can make that experience better in other ways through the support, then it might be worthwhile for them to think, you know what, I could probably, stay here longer. So I'd like to be able to do that, so that you enable them to kind of think a little bit more strategically. Yeah. Which, like I said, sometimes it's very difficult to do when you don't necessarily have the support that you need.
Yeah. I think what's really important listening to you is that someone like yourself, mashallah, who's been around in education and in Islamic education for as long as you have been, we really need to start really developing some of these ideas.
Yes.
To improve our schools,
definitely,
to improve the profession and to improve just the overall experience for children, because sometimes staffing, well-being, mental health, and just overall just attention to their developmental needs, being in an Islamic school, are maybe overlooked.
Yes.
And I think it's important that we don't forget about that, because as you said, they're at the heart of the school, aren't they?
Yes.
And it's really crucial that they get looked after. So,
because ultimately they have an impact on how the teaching and learning happens with the children. And if you've got a staff member who's stressed and everything else, that's going to show through in their practice.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's the children that will have an impact on that. And I think we sometimes think, well, as Muslims, these are things that, we've sorted out because our iman is there and everything. Yeah, it is there. But you know what? We also experience stress. And sometimes that can manifest in ways that are quite negative. You may not be able to see that, but it does. And we need to recognize that, I think, so that, we make that experience for the children. And ultimately, the reason why I want to do this, because ultimately this impacts on the children. So it always goes back to the needs of the children. They're always at the heart of everything. If you want to improve those experiences, then you need to kind of look up and think, okay, what needs to change further up to enable that to happen? And I think, that support network is one of them.
I think when you put it like that, in terms of how do you make the children's experience better, and you look around yourself, a big part of it is those teachers, those educators that are kind of with them day in, day out. Because unfortunately, the workload will be there. Teaching is one of those jobs. You've got the planning, you've got the teaching, you've got the marking, assessment, and all of those things. And I don't think those things will go away, but it's how you approach them and how you manage yourself can make a difference in how you, how that then ends up looking. And doesn't have to be always burdensome if you know how to use those tools to manage that. Let's talk a little bit about Islamic schools in general. Do you think there's a need for Islamic schools?
Yes, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Absolutely. From all angles, actually. Definitely from the children's angle. And I think, we touched upon this at the beginning where we talked about, children can go to mainstream schools, absolutely, and then they can have a supplementary and all the rest of it. But sometimes I feel, there's children are sort of battling with ideas and their identity sometimes, because they go to mainstream schools and there's no mention necessarily of their deen and Islam, and then they come back home and then you have to pray and you have to read the Quran, and so it's like a dual personality that's going on, which can't be a good thing for a child. It's not a good thing for adults. It definitely can't be a good thing for children. But if children are then being brought up from the beginning with that kind of personality, what ideas are they taking away about Islam? Is it that, we have to be embarrassed about Islam? We shouldn't talk about it. So I think, there's that aspect from the students' point of view. But also, I think from teachers' point of view, that they have a choice in terms of where they want to work.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I've worked in the mainstream sector and I've worked in, an Islamic school. And, if I'm going to work somewhere where I think it's in keeping with my deen, then I would choose an Islamic school any day. So from that aspect as well, it's, I think they need a choice. And sometimes, unfortunately, that choice comes with a sacrifice that they have to also make, but the choice is there. And I think so from both aspects, from the children's, the parents and the teachers, you need a choice. And there definitely is room for, and in all honesty, if there wasn't, we wouldn't have a school full of children.
The evidences and the admissions that you have.
Otherwise we would have closed down.
But it's really interesting, actually. I've never heard it from that perspective, that one of the kind of reasons that we need Islamic schools is also to serve the kind of teachers and the staff and the educators and give them a choice, like you said. So in a nutshell, it really kind of precisely, what is an Islamic school in your view? What is an Islamic school? You must get asked this question all the time. What's an Islamic school? What is an Islamic school?
Well, Islamic school is really, I would say, for us, it's an extension of the tarbiyah that starts at home. And we see ourselves as that. We don't see ourselves as somewhere where you put your child in and you outsource the tarbiyah. That's not what we're about. So, for us, it's about, an extension of that tarbiyah, and enhancing it and sort of making it come to life and offering that social environment that is in keeping with our faith as well.
Sure.
But you're getting, in a sense, everything under one roof.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of Islamic schools, really. That, you know, you don't have to see it as an outsourcing of anything. And we certainly don't want to be. I know, I guess maybe not all Islamic schools see themselves as that, but we don't see ourselves as something you outsource, but as an extension of the tarbiyah that starts at home and continues, obviously, at home, but we just supplement that. In a sense.
It'd be really interesting to know if we were to survey, there's about 50,000 kids that attend Muslim schools up and down the country. And if you were to interview or survey those parents, those sets of parents, how many of them see an Islamic school as an extension of the tarbiyah at home, and versus how many of them actually see Islamic schools being the tarbiyah, okay?
Yes.
And them being an extension to it.
Yeah.
The other way around.
Absolutely. And I would say that we probably have both kind of parents, you know, who come along. However, at the beginning, when we have that interview, we make that very clear that that's what we want to be. We want it to be a partnership, absolutely, and it should be. It's a homeschool partnership, and we want to nurture that partnership. But we make it very clear that, look, you know, tarbiyah starts at home. Yeah. Having said that, there are parents who may struggle in that. Yeah. And we know that. And so it's not about turning away those parents for us. No. What we sometimes find is that when we get those parents coming along who see the school as the tarbiyah solely, is that, you know, there are changes in the home that come about because the child now attends an Islamic school. And so that filters down to the home. So it's not about cutting off and saying, well, and making a judgment and saying, well, you know, if that's not started in the home, then forget it. You're not welcome here. But, you know, inshallah, you know, sometimes things happen in different ways. You know, it doesn't necessarily happen in that, like, you know, parents are very strong at home and so therefore they continue on. Sometimes it is that they've made the intention that they want to send their child to an Islamic school, but they themselves might not have that tarbiyah or have not been brought up with that tarbiyah. So we definitely have that. But they want to make a change. They want to have a change for their child. And, you know, and that's also a good place to come from as well. So, yeah, you'll get probably the two. But we do have a good portion, alhamdulillah, of our parents where they're very much involved in their children's education, but not just education, but just nurturing them in other ways. You know, you know, they're very much involved in that. And they work closely with the school, and their values are in line with what our values are. Yeah. And so it works really well. And where it's not, we try to work with the parent and sort of encourage and, you know.
I guess no partnership is going to be the same. No relationship, no marriage is ever the same. Absolutely. So, and I'm pretty sure, going back to what I said earlier on, you're a boutique school in some ways. So you will accommodate, you'll be flexible, absolutely. And you'll find a solution to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Islamic schools up and down the country, whether it be down here in London or up north in the Midlands, some, you know, there's some challenging times now and probably ahead, as it has been in the past.
Absolutely.
What do you think are the biggest challenges, or the single biggest challenge that we have in Islamic schools at the moment?
At the moment, I would probably, I mean, things always change with regards to, you know, what is required, teaching standards and all of that. And there may be more changes to come. You know, the most recent change being the RSE, for example, the RSE curriculum. And I dare say maybe there is going to be more development even in that to come. That will be a challenge that we all need to sort of embrace and find ways of getting around that. But being an independent school, alhamdulillah, I think it gives us that autonomy to be able to do it in a way that is in keeping with our deen and, you know, and one that where our parents are also kind of happy with as well. So I would say, yeah, you know, in terms of legislations and everything else, that's probably one challenge. And the other challenge I would say for us at the moment, when we're kind of thinking about, is trying to find creative ways in bridging that whole conversation about budget and finances. It's always going to be a challenge, I think, but I think we need to. We've come to a stage where we've kind of, we've been doing sort of reviewing all of this, and we've come to the stage where we think that we need to start becoming a little bit more creative in how we do that. It's not always about just going out there and doing fundraising.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work. And so we need to become a bit more smarter in the strategies we, use, and doing that by looking at, other independent schools, not necessarily Islamic independent schools, but other independent schools and how they do it.
Yeah.
So I think that is a challenge, but it's a kind of an exciting challenge as well.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of room to learn, and it's a learning curve there. And I think we need to be, as schools, constantly about learning and growing. So we sort of embrace all of these challenges as a learning opportunity, inshallah, and about new ideas and about change for the better.
And mashallah, you've answered my next question as well, which was about what opportunities do you foresee for Muslim schools going forward? And I think in part of your answer, you said that we've got to adapt and learn and become flexible. And I think you're right. I think this challenge around finance is not one that's going to go away quickly. And we have to look at alternative ways of fundraising or bringing in income, let's just say. And I think we can learn from other independent schools, not necessarily Muslim schools, and other organizations that the way they run. So, mashallah, it sounds like you've got your hands full, head teacher, mashallah, trustee, but also part and parcel of that kind of those projects and those ideas. And I'm wondering if you ever sleep.
Alhamdulillah. No, for me, like I said at the beginning, health and well-being needs to start with yourself. And that's something that I've definitely been spending a lot of time on over the last couple of years, because I think if you're not, stable and, and I have seen and I've spoken to other heads where, they're very stressed and it manifests in all sorts of things in terms of your health.
Would you say you're a stressed head teacher?
No, I don't think so. Alhamdulillah. And I try not to. I mean, there's always going to be challenges and everything else, but I try to. My way of kind of looking at challenges is by consulting. And I do sort of, and that's a good thing about, one of the things that, for me, networking is very important. And although, yes, we are an Islamic school here, but I try to sort of keep relationship with other Islamic schools. Sure. And so we do, very much have that communication. And, I will pick up the phone. Likewise, others will do the same and ask advice from another head in terms of, look, how are you doing that? So we work very closely as well in that respect. And alhamdulillah, it's nice to know that, and we don't see ourselves as sort of competition or anything like that. It's about, we're there to serve the community. And we need to see the education. It's not just about educating the children in Redbridge for me. It's about having an impact on all our Muslim children. Yeah. It doesn't matter where they are. And so we have done things where we've worked together. Yeah. In terms of interschool, we've hosted ourselves a speech-making competition where we invited other schools to come along, and we did this, and it's about celebrating the successes of all of our children together, and other things like we've had inter-school sports events, which have been hosted by other schools as well, which we've participated in. So we do have that sort of working together relationship with other schools, and that's quite important. But because it can be, like I said, as a head, it can be a lonely job.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you know, everything sort of ends with you. It stops. Yeah, the buck stops with you, doesn't it? And so ultimate decision making and everything is yours. But I've been very fortunate that I never sort of do that myself. It's for me, it's about consulting and having that shura and you know, consulting with my trustees, but also with my my SLT as well, and coming up with decisions. And whatever decisions we make, you know, for me, it's about, I want to be fair and just in what I do, because ultimately we're all answerable.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, the best way to do that is by consulting. And you know, sometimes when you make a decision on your own, it might not be the right decision. So I think, I try not to sort of get myself stressed about everything, because in all honesty, you know, a problem is a problem. A problem is something that you manifest, but that problem might be a problem to you, might not be a problem to somebody else.
That's true.
So therefore, you know, it's about looking at that idea and thinking, okay, how do you deal with that? And doing it with the best intentions. Yeah. And that's all you can do, you know. But yeah, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, it sounds like a wise head with that's got probably a lot of battle scars.
And definitely had those.
Kind of
and learn from those.
Absolutely. and ready to now share. Yeah, inshallah. So, inshallah, as we come towards the end of the show, I wanted to ask you a real personal question, and I hope you don't mind me asking you this, but what does success look like to you? Like, when it's all said and done, okay, what does success look like to you? You know, you've committed a big portion of your life to this school, to this project, to this cause. So what do you want to get out of it, inshallah? What does success look like?
Well, I guess there's two aspects of that. There's that inner success where you feel contentment.
Okay.
With whatever decisions you've made and whatever the outcome is. And I ultimately, in whatever I do, if I feel that within myself, I've done the best that I can do, and I feel content, then alhamdulillah, I think that's success. In terms of external, for me, it would be seeing the school flourish, continue to flourish, and growing, being able to serve more children and make it a place that staff enjoy really working in. And I think we're working towards that. But, you know, easing things for staff, but also without compromising what the children get.
Sure.
So yeah, it's about just continuing on really with this. But I think on a wider, having an impact in other ways, to, you know, establishing other projects that we've, you know, been thinking about and making them a success as well, so that you're impacting more and more people.
Sure.
So I think, I guess leaving a legacy.
MashaAllah. Inshallah, I pray that Allah accepts it from you and allows you to leave that legacy.